This is part 3 on how to scale your artwork. This is on using an architect scale. Okay, now for instance, let's say that we've taken all of our measurements and we want to apply that to a drawing so that we can understand it and study it a little bit. We're going to need to make that drawing in some fashion that we can share that with other people, and it's going to be really difficult to do that in a one-to-one scale. I mean, you can't do a drawing that's 9 feet long and 20 feet high. You've got to have something to work with. So the first thing that we're going to need to learn how to do is to scale our artwork so that no matter what the situation we find ourselves in, we can figure out how to make it fit the location. We'll also learn how to scale things so that we'll know how much material is going to be used when producing the artwork. This is important when making large-scale drawings. It involves math, but it's not hard, and it's not a difficult thing to do. So then, this is an architect scale. I'm going to try to show you how this scale will help you make scaling things more understandable. For the most part, an architectural scale looks like a simple ruler, but it's a bit more complicated than that, but not much. First off, it has 3 sides. That is because there are 3 different ways to use an architect scale. Let's start with the side that has measurements on it that everyone is sure to understand. This is an inch. The 1 inch equals 1 foot scale. What the scale does is break down 1 inch into 12 equal parts, or 12 scale inches. That means that this 1 inch equals 12 inches, or 1 foot. If you measure from the 0 on the right, the red mark, you will see 3 inches, 6 inches, and 9 inches. At the end closest to the scale marker, where 1 is 12 inches. If you look down the length of the scale to the left, each of the larger numbers noted here represents a foot in scale, which is a lot easier than trying to draw out literally 4 feet on a piece of paper that is only 8.5 by 11 inches. You'll run out of room before you even start. Now there are times when using an architect scale that is 1 inch equals 1 foot scale is just too big to get everything to fit on a page. That is why if you look at the other end of the 1 inch equals 1 foot scale, you'll see the 1/2 inch equals 1 foot scale, which is, exactly 1/2 the size of the 1 inch scale. So here is the 1/2 inch equals 1 foot scale. We can see the number 10 just to the left of the 0 mark here. Now don't get confused. This is 10 feet as measured from the 1 inch equals 1 foot scale coming from the other end of the scale. In reality, this is the 1 foot marker line in the 1/2 inch equals 1 foot. If we read from the 1/2 inch end, we will see how 1/2 inch equals 1 foot, just like with the 1 inch equals 1 foot scale. You should be able to make out 3, 6, and 9 inches pretty clearly, as well as all the increments in between. A drawing done in this scale would be half the size of the 1 inch equals 1 foot scale. So what happens if you want to work even smaller? If you turn the scale around on the opposite side from the 1 inch to equals 1 foot scale, you will find the 1/4 inch equals 1 foot scale. Now you'll notice that while you can read the 3, 6, and 9 inch increments, the spaces between are much smaller. This scale is half the size of the 1/2 inch equals 1 foot scale, and obviously 1/4 of the size of the 1 inch equals 1 foot scale. At the far end of the 1/4 inch equals 1 foot scale, you will find the 1/8 inch equals 1 foot scale. Here the 6 inch increments can be seen in red, but the increments in between are now 2 inches per mark instead of 1 inch. This is because to depict anything else would be difficult, and so you either round up or down dependent upon the scale that you have in your drawing, and then write in the correct measurement. After that, you often do a partial detail of that in a larger scale elsewhere. All of these scales are divisible by one another, which is why they are all on the same side of the scale. Now, what if you wanted to work in a larger scale where you could show more details? things like half and quarter-inch drawn in a scale drawing, but drawn somewhat smaller than a 1-to-1 scale, so that you can execute details and still keep them on the same drawing. If you turn the scale over to the second side, you'll see this. This is the 3-inch equals 1 foot scale. Here, not only do you have the 3, 6, and 9-inch increments, you have 1 inch, the long red line, half-inch, the short red line, and quarter-inch, the shortest red line. Opposite the 3-inch equals 1 foot scale on the same side is the 1 1/2 inch equals 1 foot scale. In this scale, you can still make out the 1 inch, the half-inch, and the quarter-inch marks, but anything smaller would again be just too difficult to try to depict. Flipping the scale over opposite the 3-inch equals 1 foot scale is the 3/4 inch equals 1 foot scale. Here we can read 1-inch increments and half-inch. Smaller increments are not shown. At the other end of the 3/4 equals 1 foot scale is the 3/8 inch equals 1 foot scale. All the scales located on this side of the scale are again divisible by one another, 3/8 being half of 3/4, 3/4 being half of 1 1/2 equals 1 foot, and finally 1 1/2 equals 1 foot being half of 3-inch equals 1 foot. If you want to draw smaller than an 1/8 inch equals a foot scale, simply turn over to the third side. This side looks like a conventional ruler, which it is, and its basic measure is 1/16 inch. This makes the other two scales on this side divisions of 1/16. The last two scales on the architect scale are 3/16 inch equals 1 foot and 3/32 of an inch equals 1 foot, which is precisely half 3/16. If you wish to ever work any smaller than this, you'll have to go to an engineering scale, which allows you to measure things like as large as entire city blocks if necessary, but that's another discussion. Now, if I'm to depict a wall that is 4 inches wide and 6 foot 7 inches and 1/2 inches long on a drawing, I can use the 1 inch equals 1 foot scale and draw it on my piece of paper. If I measure it with the 1/16 scale, I will see that it measures 6 5/8 inches in length. I'm doing this for comparison so that you can see what the next scale depiction will look like, which is to draw the same length of wall, but this time do it 1/2 inch equals 1 foot scale. I might have to do this because this is all the room that I have on my paper to do the drawing in. That is the reason why we scale drawings in the first place, to make sure that they fit onto the piece of paper in order to communicate our designs. This time, if I measure the wall that I drew with the 1/16 inch scale, it will measure 3 5/16 of an inch, or exactly half the length of the first wall. This makes sense because 3 5/16 is exactly half of 6 5/8. And if you look at both walls side by side on the same piece of paper, you can see that one above is twice the size of the other, and yet both of them are drawn to represent the same length of wall. They are just in different scales. Now we'll undertake to do some practical applications of this on some drawings of our own. May seem a little bit confusing at first, but don't worry, you'll get it.